Okay, so today I'm at work. I got an interesting one for you. We've got a 96 F-150, one of the old square body styles, and they brought it in for safety inspection. And as you can see here, the shock, the actual shock tower, spring tower on this truck has rusted out. Now it's jammed in there now. But the shock is actually pushed through the top. And if you look here, you can see how, whoop, there we go. Light's a little bright, that's better. You can see how flaky and nasty and crusty it is. The other side's not in a great deal better shape. So, I'm gonna have to take the, if you're looking at it from here, I'm gonna have to take the tire off. Then we'll have to remove the spring, the shock, the brake line back here. And then there are rivets down there, one up in here. Oh, there you go. And there are two more back, they're hard to see back behind the shock there. We're gonna have to grind those rivets out, grind the heads off of them, knock the rivets out, and actually bolt in two new spring towers that came, we actually ordered these directly from Ford. Have a left and a right, but that's what you're looking at. And that is the Ford part number. I can get you in here a little closer. There you go. That's the Ford part number. So if you're familiar with these trucks, you'll know this is a common issue. They get, the problem is they'll get crap trapped up. Oops, sorry. They'll get dirt and crap trapped up in the top of these spring towers, and it just rots them out. There's just nothing you can do about it. You get a truck that's 30 years old, 20 years old, you're gonna have this issue. So I'll get the tire pulled off, and we'll bring you back. Okay, now I've got the tire out of the way. And if you look down here, there's a cup in here. Whoop, there we go. That bolt running through it that actually holds the spring down to the axle. So as corroded as that bolt is, I've hit it with some WD-40, but I'm probably just going to leave that in there and move the spring out of the way as much as I can. Now there's that bolt and tab up here that you have to remove to get the spring loose. That's actually a hook that runs around under the spring to hold it in place. You can see, now it's a lot easier to see how that's just a big hole up there. It's completely rusted through. Now, go through, make sure you use some penetrating oil on all your fasteners, your shock mounts, your brake lines, because your brake lines do run through that bracket. There are two other rivets down underneath of, there we go, one's right there. There's another one up in the front underneath the bracket to go up into the frame. We'll have to get those out. But with the brake lines, what I'm probably going to try and do is, you can see there's a little clip that retains it into the bracket. I'm probably just going to try and cut around those with a torch for now. That way I don't have to disconnect the brake line and worry about brake fluid running all over the place. I can just do it one time and be done. But otherwise, we're gonna get the shocks out of the way. We'll get the top bolt on that spring loose on both sides. I'm gonna take you around the other side. Same thing over here. You know, up there you can definitely tell that bracket's getting rust. It's gonna rust through. It just hasn't done it yet. That's why we're replacing both of them. But, and then this one's got the T that splits the brake line. So, anyway, I'm going to get a little more disassembly done, and then I'll bring you back. Now while we're at it, I'm going to call in and just have them send new shocks out as well, because those shocks I think have both probably seen their better days. And this top nut, you can see how corroded that is. That's going to be almost impossible to get off without just spinning the shock shaft. So we will bring you back when we get a little farther along. Now to get the shock on this side, on the left-hand side out, I actually had to put a jack stand up underneath the axle and lift it up, because the shock is what limits the maximum droop of this front axle. And when I go to pull the bolt out, if you don't get something underneath here to support it, you're going to end up having to drive the bolt out. As you can see, as I let this down, see how the axle's traveling down. Now the bolt's still halfway in there, so I'm not going to go too far. But get something underneath there to support that axle, and then you can get the bolt out without too much trouble. You may still have to use a hammer and a punch and drift it out, but it won't bind up. So I'll go ahead and get this out, and we'll get on to the next step, and I'll bring you back. Okay, I've got you set up so that hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing here. But you can do this with a grinder. You can do this any way you want it. But I'm going to go through the torch and try the best I can to knock the heads off these rivets. Now I've sped this up 2 times, so if it looks like I'm working fast, yeah, I don't work that fast. But I also did the voiceover because with the torch it is exceedingly noisy. But as you can see, I'm just going through, heating them up, and torching the head off the rivet. Had a little trouble there with the torch. I bumped the oxygen knob and ended up blowing the torch out. But I'm just going through, popping the heads off the rivets, and then in the next clip coming up, I'll go back in with the air hammer and actually shove the rivets through. You could do the same process with a grinder, a hammer, and a punch, but being in the shop and this being a customer project, I have to be time conscious, so I am doing it the quickest way that I can to get the job done. Now, the decision was made to go ahead and replace the brake hoses later on, and we ended up also, as you'll hear toward the end of the video, having to replace a brake caliper because a bleeder was stuck. But both the brake hoses go through the bracket, and they were so rusted into the bracket that neither one of them was going to come out of the bracket even after the clips were removed. About the only way we'd get them out is to drive them out, and that was just, it's not worth the risk. The brake hoses are cheap, and it's better just to go ahead and put a new set on, not have to worry about any damage being done to them, and you know, they'll just be good fresh hoses. So I'll be quiet and let you watch the rest of the clip of me torching the heads off of these. Okay, now I've got the air hammer out. I got the air hammer out. We're going to go through and we're going to knock the rivets back through. Now, if you can see in the video, I don't know if you can tell, I have my earplugs in. Wear hearing protection. This is just going to be stupid loud. what's holding it is one bolt up here on the front. So, get that out. Okay. That one I'm going to have to torch off too, because that one is actually a pressed in stud and it is spinning in the frame. I got it all pulled off. Got it all ready to go back on. My hardware is laid out on my box. We're going to get started reassembling the new one on the truck. Alright, this is the right hand side. Got it all bolted in. Now I just need to install a new shock and a brake hose. Okay, this is the left hand side. We got everything is installed and tight. That's the strap that holds the coil in place. There's a slot underneath that holds it. The two bottom bolts need to be tightened first. Then you can tighten the other four that mount the spring pocket. Otherwise it won't pull up tight to the frame. We also installed new brake hoses and a new caliper on the driver's side because the bleeder was seized in. We also put new tires on it at the owner's request. It test drove great. It handled wonderfully. It was an easy job. Please comment, rate, and subscribe.